No, it was a complete surprise. We knew something big was coming, but we had no idea what it was.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
You're watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. My name is TK Trinidad, and today we have an amazing show with an amazing guest. She is the Jill of all trades, rhinestone cowgirl, Impact Wrestling Backstage correspondent. Please welcome Mean Gia Miller. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, and a fabulous introduction.
Thank you. I mean, it's so crazy. I mean, I'm sure you get this all the time. It's like Mean Gia Miller, but you're just so like not mean.
Right? It's kind of like it's an ironic name, but I get it if you see a different side of me, but you don't see that side.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. But let's talk about it. So Impact Wrestling had they have a real fun show, IPWF, where you got to wrestle in it. Because for my folks who don't know, where you should know. And before I actually ask you this question, first I'll shout out. I've been following Impact for a long time, and we've been doing shows about Impact for a long time. And I remember when they had almost like rotating hosts, like depending on where they're filming, they had different hosts.
Yeah.
So shout out to you. You are like the chick. You are the person. Great job. And I'm not going to go into how you got started because you've done a whole bunch of interviews talking about that. So if y'all want to know, just go and check out the other interviews. But great job. And like you're the face, you're the backstage face. So kudos to you for that.
I try. I'm the backstage bombshell. That's what I call myself.
There it is. I like it. So let's get into you do the backstage stuff, but this latest episode, you're doing some wrestling. And it's 80s styles wrestling. So how did that come about? And I saw your Instagram pictures with like your outfit. So like take me through all of that. How did you guys recreate all this?
So that's that other side that I'm talking about. That's that mean side that gets to come out every now and again. Obviously, I've said it in interviews before. I got into wrestling originally because I wanted to be a wrestler. And then I kind of fell into this role and really hit my stride here. But when they started talking about IPWF, they did it before I showed up at Impact, and I loved it. And I begged, please, if y'all do it again, please let me be on it. Please, 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 please. And then once they started talking about it, someone just mentioned it to me. They were just like, oh, yeah, you're wrestling. And I was like, I'm sorry, wait, what? And so this is I believe my 4th IPWF. That I'm doing, and I've gotten to wrestle each time. It's been a lot of fun. I did WrestleCade last year, and it's like I get to have these matches like with Deonna Purrazzo, Jordan Grace, Courtney Rush slash Rosemary, people that I may have never been in the ring with otherwise, especially as an interviewer. But this Thursday, it's all going down. It's not Mean Gia Miller and not Jordan Grace. It is Rusty Iron and Georgia Cobb in a mixed tag match. My partner will be, of course, Rip Razor, and her tag partner is Cowboy Colt McCoy. So it's gonna be very interesting.
Oh my gosh! So like, so many. I'm just fascinated with the behind the scenes of it all. Like who came up with like the names? I mean, obviously, I see how certain things play out based off personalities, but like, how did it all come about? How do you decide this was like your kid? This is who you're going to embody?
Well, our writers are in charge of the whole thing, and it's a big fun project, and they have a lot of fun with it, clearly. And when they first pitched me, I was always going to be with Rip Razor, but I was going to be named Stacy Stiletto because we love alliterations. And while I loved Stacy Stiletto, Rusty Iron actually is an inside joke between me and a lot of the knockouts. It is too many stories combined into one to try and say it, but I'll basically say that I'm anemic and I don't have enough iron, and it just you know how jokes just snowball. and I became Rusty Iron, and I was like, well, if I'm with Rip Razor, what if we were Rip and Rusty, a little bit of R&R? And they were like, Okay, we could do that. So we still have that freedom to, like, if we have an idea, we can pitch it. Even last year at WrestleCade, it was my first time without Ace/Rip, and Rip has the knife as his weapon, and I knew I was going to have Sebastian Baker, aka Jimmy Jacobs, as my manager. So I was like, well, I feel like I need a supplemental weapon. So I get to WrestleCade, hop in an Uber, go to Lowe's, buy an 8-inch galvanized spike, because that was Jimmy Jacobs' calling card, and I'm a Jimmy Jacobs mark. And I had it like in my pocket, and I was like, Jimmy, can I please? And he was like, no, you can't use that. And I was like, well, like, and I pitched the whole idea. He was like, okay, well, you've really thought about this. Okay, I guess I'll let you use it. So I was like, yes. And then I did reach out to him before this past one, and I just made sure, hey, is Rusty still allowed to use the spike? And he was like, always and forever. So I was like, it was, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love the fact that, our predecessors are able to, like, okay, clearly you've done your research, like you can do it. But speaking of kind of going back in time a little bit, after Bound for Glory, they did this crazy ass video. Like, shout out to the writers, the editors, all the things.
Oh my gosh,
TNA.
I know.
So first off, did you and everybody else know that, like, this was coming, or was it?
No, it was a complete surprise. We knew something big was coming, but we had no idea what it was. So at the end of Bound for Glory, everyone was just huddled around. I mean, I know you've probably seen the video of everyone just huddled around the screens watching, hoping that we're going to find out what this big announcement is. And it was a legitimate reaction. Nobody in that room knew what was about to happen, what was about to be said. And it was, I mean, Trey Miguel said it best. He was the star of that video. But that's exactly how everyone felt. I felt that way. I was so excited. I was so shocked, so surprised. But I mean, the time was right. And I'm so excited. And now I get to say that I'm a TNA knockout. That's so cool.
It was, yeah, it's just like, what a time to be alive, like wrestling and women's wrestling. And like, I mean, I've said it like everywhere, like impacts, the knockouts, like women's wrestling, like this is everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. Which brings us to 2024, which is like 4 or 5 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks away. So you guys are going to be in Orlando, Vegas for Hard to Kill. And I'm sure, the calendar's already kind of packed. So what's the excitement for yourself? Because you kind of have to lead the charge, try not to get hit, all the things. But you're involved in all these kind of storylines, being the backstage correspondent. So
I mean, I get the scoop. I'm there for all of the big developments, and that's something that it is not lost on me. I love the moments that I get to be there for and part of. January is absolutely already stacked. We are starting the year off with a bang. We'll be at the Palms for Hard to Kill, like you said, on January 13th, I believe. 13th? Yes. And then the 14th is Snake Eyes. It's going to be, I know our locker room, I know our roster. They are going to come in like a blaze of glory, like a bat out of hell. They are going to give it their all for that first couple of shows. And for the rest of the year, I can imagine, because there is just this morale that's in the locker room right now that is just unmatched.
Yes, I definitely agree. Now, I know this might get you into a bit of hot water, so I apologize. Okay. But who is your favorite knockout?
Ooh. That is a tough question. I will say, while we have many, many legends that I respect and admire and owe a lot to, there is one that I owe everything to, and that would be Jessica Havoc, or just Jessica right now. She is truly my wrestling mother, as a person, but then as a wrestler, as a knockout, she was one of the first ones that I saw that made it click for me. When I was in middle school, high school, never really thinking that that's something I would ever be able to do, even though I loved it so much. It was something about seeing her so authentic and so real and something so unique. It was hers. She was Havoc. And sure, there were a lot of different characters, and maybe there was inspiration drawn from her and from others, but there was only one Havoc. There was only one Jessica. And even now with this new version of her that we're seeing, you're really getting to see the depth and how good she is, the range that she can do, because she's so freaking funny. But she's my favorite knockout for sure.
Okay, all right. I mean, I like that. Has she given you any advice that, like, to this day, like, you know, when you're doing something, like, it's almost like, because I know when my mentors give me advice and then I'm implementing it in my life, I think like, oh my gosh, this is like invaluable. So has she given you any advice?
Oh my gosh, she's given me all of the advice. She has been there for me before I even started training. I lived in her house, and pretty much all of my beginning lessons before I even stepped in a ring came from her. Just little ins and outs, little tidbits of information. Her and Sammy both. They both really took care of me and made sure that I had every tool in my toolbox to help me succeed. And I really credit them so much for just how much I've done in a very short amount of time.
Nice. And you know, speaking of stuff you've done not only backstage and your wrestling, but you also like you put stuff together, you bedazzle stuff. Do you sew as well?
I do. I actually, all of my gear I've made. There's only one set that I haven't made that was made by Allie Parker post apartment fire a couple years ago. But I have made all of my own gear. There are some things I do make from scratch. I do a lot of embellishing, bedazzling, painting. I am indeed the Jill of all trades, master of none. I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, and speaking of hats, I did see that interview with Mickie James where you make a lot of her hats, and you also help. I mean, I saw an Instagram video where Masha, I think you revitalized one of her outfits with bedazzling, and apparently you do that for a lot of the knockouts, and maybe the guy wrestlers as well. But what is your most? Because I also sew as well, and I always think of like. I always think of like the stuff that I've sewn throughout. Like my very first thing, this is, I'm going to edit this part out, but I made my mom and I a skirt when I was like 6. And I remember it. Like it was a terrible skirt. The lines were all off and all this stuff.
Oh yeah, you remember.
What's a piece of thing that you're like, you look back and you're like, man, like it's always kind of holds something in your heart.
Honestly, it was something that I've done in the past year or so. And it was gear for a male wrestler on the indies. With a very specific character and a very specific look. That it wasn't trunks, it wasn't tights. I made him a romper, a jumpsuit, if you will. Literally like a collared shirt, button up that had an attached belt and attached shorts, and I did little embellished rolled cuffs and pockets and emblems. Because he's a fraternity guy. So it had to be kind of preppy, but still athletic. And I made the first one, and we didn't really use the right material, but it came together okay, and it held up. We're like, let's take another crack at it. And we found the perfect material for it, and it came together so quickly. And he still wears it, and it is probably the one thing I'm the most proud of.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that gives me goosebumps. Like, I just seeing your vision come to, it's like all the way, like the artist in you, like seeing your vision come to light with everything, and then also seeing like the costumes and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I say all the time, I'm not a planner. I'm not very good at planning. I'm not good at thinking about things beforehand. I'm just a doer. I just do things. So sometimes it gets really overwhelming for me to try and visualize like, okay, this is the thing I want to do, and I need to do this so that I can do this. I just kind of let things go. And as I continue to make, I continue to create. And I'm like, maybe I could do this. Let's try this. And if I don't like it, I can always undo it.
Okay. I like it. And before we get out of here, let's talk about relationships. And it's so funny. You saw this week's episode, and they made reference to you and Ace being in a relationship. And, you know, back in, I think it's, you know, kind of the play on the 80s, it's like, you know, your parents wouldn't like it. But fast forward to where we are now, 2023, being in the relationship and, you know, being with somebody that you also work with, and all the things. What is that like? You know, you see a lot of it. There are a lot of wrestlers who are in relationships, but, you know, what's yours like?
Sure. Well, you know, it's different for every couple, because some couples work really well together, and some, not in a negative way, but they work better on their own, and you don't see them kind of cross over very often. And we do that a little bit. We're definitely crossed over on the indies a little bit. And so when we get to do our fun stuff for IPWF, it's always a good time. Anytime I get to share the stage or the camera with him is always special to me. But it's so funny because before I worked at Impact, he was there. And that was how I got that opportunity, but it wasn't through him. I did not want to go and be Ace Austin's girlfriend in the back. Right. I wanted to go and be Gia Miller, Georgia Lee Milton, someone who's willing to work hard and do whatever it takes to succeed. Yeah. And it all just kind of worked out, but it's honestly been so wonderful to share this journey with him. He's, in addition to him being my best friend, my number one supporter, he's also a coach of mine. He's also one of my trainers, and he is really good at not letting our relationship affect our professional relationship, and vice versa. Although they cross over a lot, we never really have conflicts regarding them. And I'm truly, truly grateful for that. But he is always there to lift me up. I love having him ringside anytime I get, because as we know, we're always so hard on ourselves. And he's such a talented performer and such a hard worker, so that when I roll over and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, he's like, you're doing so good. I'm so proud of you. And that's all I need, because I know he wouldn't say that if he didn't mean it. He won't just blow up my ego. And I appreciate his honesty always.
Nice. Oh my gosh. A nice, mature, healthy relationship. You need to see more of that on social media. Right? But last question before we get out of here. And this one might be, I think I've been saying this is a tough question throughout the whole interview, so my bad. But last question. Who are your Mount Rushmores? So two things: Mount Rushmore of women wrestlers, and then Mount Rushmore of wrestling personalities. Backstage and correspondents and color commentators. Who would be your, and with that second one, you can include men and women. Okay.
I think my women's wrestling Mount Rushmore. Obviously, I have to put Gail Kim. 100%. Have to put Awesome Kong. 100%. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's a given, Mickie James. And for me, it's Tara Victoria. She is that. Those are my Mount Rushmore. Is it 4 or is it 5?
It's 4.
Okay. All right. Okay. There we go.
I always
as far as broadcast personalities, commentary, I'll even include managers a little bit in there, because there's a lot of crossover there. I mean, Mean Gene, of course, Renee Paquette, because oh my gosh, that is someone I really idolize, and I want to be like, oh my gosh, she's incredible. Let's see. Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
It's a given.
Yeah.
And this one is my personal Mount Rushmore, Tom Hannafin. I think he is one of the best, if not the best, in the business. And he's been so, so vital to my career. And he's really taught me so much. But it takes a lot to be able to teach someone that. So that's a true testament of how good he is.
Well, there it is. I want to thank you so much. I'm going to let you get, because you got a lot of things going on. But before you get out of here, let people know where they can find you.
You can find me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, the whole 9 yards, at Mean Gia Miller, no spaces involved. Or you can check me out every Thursday night on Impact Wrestling.
There it is. And then also shout to your mom, that GLAM acronym.
Right, Georgia Leanne Milton. She planned it. Slam and Glam. That's us.
I might have to steal that acronym. That's amazing. So shout out to her for that. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is TK Trained. You can follow me on everything at TK Trained. Make sure you check out Women's Wrestling Talk on everything at WW Talk Pod. And also www.talkpod.com and WW Talk Pod. And thank you guys for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Ciao, y'all.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.